Hello everyone, and today we're going to finish up with field work, and today we're going to be taking a look primarily at interviewing. You know, interviewing is just as much an art as it is a skill. There's some things that you can learn from these types of resources like a textbook, but there's also that element that requires you just getting out there and learning from experience. So the more you learn from this end, the better off you're going to be as you start out with interviewing techniques, and that's what we're going to start out with today. Okay, everybody, let's go ahead and finish up chapter 18 as we finish up the process and the practice of field work. Recording the responses. Now, as your textbook says, the rules for recording responses to fixed alternative questions vary with the specific questionnaire. For instance, if it asks a question and then gives you some options to answer, then some people, as they indicate, some novices who are doing the field research may not require a question because the next question may answer that question and so forth. So again, it's not up to us to determine what should be asked. If the question is there, then we should ask it and record the responses. Now, there are rules for recording open-ended answers, and they give you these. Record responses during the interview. Now, one of the things that I used to do, and you may not have to do this, but especially if it was a open-ended question and I wanted to make sure that I had the exact response that the respondent was replying to, I would record it along with writing down whatever responses the person may have on the questionnaire and all that. And that can help you. Use the respondent's own words. Don't embellish with that. You know, make sure that you use their words. What they say is what you are including in your survey or questionnaire or interview or whatever. Do not summarize or paraphrase the respondent's answer. Now, if you remember yesterday, I told you one of the things that I used to do was clarify what they were saying. So what you're telling me is that you want this, this, and this, and they would affirm it. Now, what they're talking about here, don't think that you know what they're talking about. Don't summarize or paraphrase the respondent's answers. And what they're looking at here are details that you may omit by doing that. If you, let's say, for instance, you paraphrased, John didn't feel like this product was very efficient or good. Well, that's paraphrasing, and John might not have liked what it was. But did you indicate what John didn't like about that product that he might have said that you omitted because you paraphrased? So we need to avoid those things. Again, we want to know exactly what the consumer or what the respondent is dealing with, feeling and experiencing and whatever. Include everything that pertains to the question objectives. And then include all of your probes. So if John said, I didn't like this product, John, why do you not like this product? And that's where if the survey or the questionnaire didn't cover that, you have covered it. And you would rather have too much than not enough. It would be up to the ones who are evaluating the interview or the whatever the interaction. If they don't want to use it, that's up to them, but at least they have that option. You've given them a lot there to be able to pick and choose from. So that will help you tremendously, and also help the evaluators tremendously if you go by the rules and do exactly what they say to do, and don't embellish or put in more than what is really there. Terminating the interview. Now, how do you close the interview? Well, that's important. And just common courtesy is a lot of this. Field workers should wait to close the interview until they have secured all pertinent information, including spontaneous comments of the respondent. So make sure you've got everything you need before you leave. When I was brand new in recruiting, there would be some questions that I would omit because of my inexperience, and I would have to recontact them or try to get back in touch with them before I could go further. And you don't want to do that, especially if you have a chance meeting with a person, let's say at a mall, and you've been able to do an interview. Going back and finding that person again is going to be very hard unless they give you an address or a phone number. And so just make sure that before you close it out, you have everything that you need. Field workers should answer any respondent questions concerning the nature and purpose of the study to the best of his or her ability. So that goes along the ethical lines. You don't need to leave them in the dark about anything. They need to know this is what the research is. This is how it will be used if you know, and they should be telling you that at the company. This is how we're going to use this information. This is the procedure that we're going to use to gather the information and then go from there. Avoid hasty departures. That's again a matter of courtesy. Don't treat them like they're just a number or that they're just a respondent. Treat them like they're humans. Tell them how much you appreciate the time that they spent and so forth, but don't just say this concludes our interview, thank you very much, and then boom, bye. You don't have to go into a lengthy conversation with them or anything, but just picking up your stuff and going, that is kind of rude. So don't do that. Just treat them like they're people. Now, it's important to thank the respondent for his or her time and cooperation as re-interviewing may be required. Leave on a good spot. If they feel like you disrespected them or that you were just treating them like just like another number or whatever, you may not be able to get a re-interview or a follow-up. So they may not remember all the good of that interview, but they will sure remember the bad, especially the bad things that you did. So just make sure that you leave appropriately, that everything that you want to have included in that interview is there. You're not missing anything. And it's okay to just say to them, do you mind if I go over this real quick before we leave? I want to make sure I have everything in here that is necessary. And most of them will do that. They will give you that time. And but again, know that this is a imposition. So you want to be as quick as possible with it. The principles of good interviewing. The basics: have integrity and be honest. Folks, we are not just business professionals and ministry professionals, we're Christians. So we want to be able to exemplify Christ, even if it is in an interview with a person answering consumer questions, wherever and whenever. Have patience and tact. There are some people who are going to be difficult. I've done that in my interviews. There were some, it was kind of like pulling teeth to get a response out of them, and it can be aggravating at times. But do have patience, and this is where your people skills will come into play. Being able to recognize that not all people are alike. Not every question is going to be interpreted exactly the same. Some people may need more time to explain things to them than others and so forth. And there are those that are going to test your patience. They're going to joke around and treat this as a joke or whatever, because some of them, they've got nothing better to do. But always remember that you're the professional, and you are there for a purpose, and that's to do research, and using that tact and professionalism and patience is going to be necessary. Not that you have to tolerate incivility or that you have to tolerate those who are just going to be obnoxious, but it is important to have patience and tact. Pay attention to accuracy and detail. And this is what a researcher will have to get in the habit of, being detail-oriented and making sure that you're accurate in everything that you say. You are carrying information that the individual who you interviewed has given you, and you want to make sure that the company is getting the most accurate, up-to-date information that they can have. So pay attention to what people are saying. Write down or record exactly what they're saying in every detail. Exhibit a real interest in the inquiry at hand, but keep your own opinions to yourself. You don't want to go up to a person and listen, I've got this thing I've got to do for my company. I really don't like to do it, or I know this is a bad time or an imposition or whatever, but would you mind doing it? No. Show an interest. One thing that I did learn in sales is that your attitude goes a long way in this, and the more you know about what the product is or the company, the more support that you have for this company, the more interested you're going to be in the things that they're asking you to do. So now keep your own opinions to yourself. I really don't like this product, but what do you think about it? Whatever. Just keep your opinions to yourself. You're there to be objective. One of the things that I learned in my PhD years, getting my PhD, when I do interviews, I have to remove myself from it. From the interview itself. Now, that's a difficult task a lot of times. I am a conservative, evangelical Christian, Southern Baptist pastor, and I have definite views on Christianity. I have definite views on anything other than Christianity. So every time I sat down with a Muslim who professed to be a Christian at one time and then converted, and then I heard all of the excuses they gave, I was ready to come off the chair and just give them a sermon. I wanted to hit them upside the head with the King James Version, red letter edition. What in the world are you thinking? How could you be that dumb? How could you be that blind? And this, that, and the other. But I couldn't do that. I had to keep my opinions to myself, even when they were grossly exaggerating the Bible and Scripture. They were doing just like Eve and the rest of them. They were letting the devil deceive them, and they were using that deception, trying to tell me that Christianity was not the way that Islam was. So to be a professional, to be a person who is going to be able to accurately get a feeling or a response from those who are doing the interview, you have to keep your opinions to yourself at that point. Now, what I did do is that I would, after the interview, talk to them and gently introduce, the truth to them. These people were radicalized, and they were very opposed to Christianity for one reason or another, but me being able to keep a relationship with them after the interview, not just, okay, thank you for your time and then I'm gone, but to be able to maintain a relationship with them has helped me, especially when I'm trying to talk to them about Jesus Christ. But during the interview, when you're engaging people, they may talk about some of the things that really hit close to home with you. That's not your job to empathize or to refute what they say. Your job is just to record accurately and in detail what they're saying. Be a good listener. And I teach business communications. Part of being a good listener is to keep eye contact, nod that you're agreeing, but if they say something that you don't understand, then you go back and you clarify what they're saying. Now, what do you mean by this? Or when you say this, what are you saying? Or why do you feel this way? And things like that. That's being a good listener, keeping an open mind again, and not be biased and not be judgmental. And that's another issue too that I had to deal with. Before I even sat down, I knew these people were lost. I knew these people were following a false God through a false prophet, and my attitudes towards them were not very, positive, because these were people who left Christianity. They should have known better, but they didn't. But again, I had to listen with open ears and an open mind to at least hear what they had to say. Now, a lot of times our biases and our stereotypes will prevent that. So be a good listener, and that means just keeping an open mind to whatever they're saying. Keep the inquiry and respondents' responses confidential. If this is something that is important to them, and most all the time it will be, make sure that they understand that what they say will be held in the highest confidence, that names won't be given out. I didn't do it. In fact, I changed the names, and they signed a statement saying they understood that I would keep their anonymity when I was interviewing my Muslim friends, and that their names would not be used, nor their locations or anything like that. You might have a form that they would have to sign that would say that their anonymity will be protected, and some people will require that before they will grant an interview. They don't want to be known or anything like that. And respect others' rights, which means that we are going to be considerate of them, and that they have a right to maintain confidentiality. They have a right to make sure that the reason for that interview or the information that they're given is going for a certain purpose, and we use it for that certain purpose. So just respecting the basic rights of an individual, that goes a long way, and it's important. Required practices: complete the number of interviews according to the sampling plan assigned to you. So if they tell you to go and do 200 interviews, do 200 interviews. That's not according to your plan, but to their plan. Follow the directions provided, and you may not understand the directions. Some of the directions may not make sense. But again, it's not up to us to interpret or to judge. It's just for us to follow. Make every effort to keep schedules. I would always, and that was always reiterated to me time and time again, never, ever, ever be late for an interview. If you have to leave an hour ahead of time, then to be at a meeting that's going to be 30 minutes away, then you do that. My rule of thumb is to always be there at least 15 minutes prior to the scheduled appointment. That way you've got time to gather your thoughts, to gather your things. You're not rushed, and chances are, if you're prepared before they even show up, you're not going to miss anything, because you're not going to be in a rush or frazzled. The last thing in the world you want to do is have people waiting for you. They're giving you their time, and you being late shows to them, or tells them, that you really don't care about their time, that it's all about yours. So make every effort to keep schedules. And again, my rule has always been, the military's rule has always been 15 minutes early everywhere you go. Keep control of each interview you do. Don't let it get out of hand. If you're asking them a specific question with a fixed answer, and you ask them that question and they say, "Oh my goodness, I can tell you about something that happened along those lines," you gently gear them back to answering that question and then moving on. Complete the questionnaires meticulously. That means don't leave anything undone. Make sure everything is completed. Check over each questionnaire you've completed just for to make sure that you've got everything done. And again, some of this stuff is fundamental, but to an inexperienced interviewer or field worker, they make these mistakes time and time again. And I can tell you, until I got the hang of it, and it took me about almost a year to where I was comfortable doing all of this stuff on my own, I was making these same mistakes. So don't think they're so small that you would never forget them, because that's usually when you will forget them. Complete or compare your sample execution and assigned quota with the total number of questionnaires you have completed, and then clear up any questions with the research agency. And you really want to do that before the end or before you go out. Clarify everything that might be a question. Fieldwork management. You want to have a briefing session for experienced interviewers. Give a background of the sponsoring organization, a demonstration of the sampling techniques, the asking of questions, callback procedures, other matters specific to the particular project. These are all just areas that you want to consider. Then training to avoid procedural errors, and that's having them avoid selection errors that result in bias. Their territory may be a tri-state area, but they only want to travel within 50 miles of Memphis. Well, if that's the case, then there's going to be bias and there's going to be selection errors. Make sure that they know that their area is that area, and don't just select people based on convenience and then engaging the sampled unit, which means just going back and forth with them. And some of the total quality management for interviewing, you want to measure response rates, measure defects in terms of measurement errors, and measure the interview process. So these are all considerations that you need to make as a manager overseeing this. And measurement. Not only are you measuring the data that the interviewer provides, but you want to measure the methods in which you are providing that information. And then here you see supervision of field workers, sampling verification, verifying that interviews are being conducted according to the sampling plan rather than with the sampling units most accessible to the interviewer. Again, if you've got a tri-state area, don't just limit your sampling units to Memphis. You want to go out and make sure that you canvass the whole area. Interviewer cheating is the practice by field working or filling in fake answers or falsifying interviews. Hey, I don't feel like going out and interviewing the last 10 people, so I'm just going to make up those interviews. People did that in recruiting. They would make up applicants just so that they could fulfill the quota requirements. And when they were discovered, they were fired. And that's what will happen to you probably. You have curb stoning. It's a form of interviewer cheating in which an interviewer makes up the responses instead of conducting an actual interview. Again, that's falsifying interviews, making up interviews. We used to call them ghost applicants. They may call it the same thing, but it's curb stoning. It's just putting in responses to an interview that never happened. And then verification by re-interviewing. And that's a quality control procedure where the fieldwork intended to ensure that interviewers are following the sampling procedures and to determine whether interviewers are cheating. So that's a kind of like a test retest scenario where you give a test and then 6 months down the line you get the test again, and if it yields the same results, you have a reliable test. And this is what you're looking at here, where you go and do the same thing to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that, what I mean by they is the field workers. Well, today as we finish up field work, we got to take a look at how interviews should be going, the questions that you should be asking, how to finish the interview. And really, one of the most important things is that after the interview is finished, getting follow-up information so that if you miss anything, you can contact that person again. A lot of this is straightforward, and that's research. It's mundane, it's fundamental, but oftentimes we overlook it in our haste and sometimes our experience. We just get lazy. So let's learn it the right way, and I believe we have. And as an interviewer, if you follow those principles, you're going to be effective out in the field. God bless you, and we'll start back next week.